Mistborn, The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson. I do have my notes here. They are physical notes as opposed to digital notes this week. It was easier to take them. I'm not quite sure if I'm going to stick with it because this is going to be pretty awkward to navigate, so bear with me. First off, 5 out of 5 stars. I absolutely adored this book. I've adored everything Brandon Sanderson has written that I've read so far. I don't actually think I've given him anything except 5 stars, which is a pretty cool feat. The whole heist idea, you guys, that is my favorite plot, okay? Every single one of my favorite books, of my favorite movies, and my favorite TV shows, it's all based on a heist. Like, oh my gosh, you guys, they're interesting, they're entertaining. I just love them. The heists are usually led by a walking stereotype, if I'm being honest. You have your suave and debonair gentleman thief. And you know, I don't even mind that it is a stereotype because I just love this type of genre so much. And in saying that, Kelsier is 100% falling into this cliche, okay? He is interesting, he gives off this whole vigilante type Neil Caffrey, Thomas Crown Affair kind of grey hat vibe. At the beginning, at the very start of this book, I don't think it's the first page, I think it's like the 3rd or 4th page. Anyway, it doesn't matter. The first time that Kelsier is introduced, he meets with the Ska and he's all happy and he's smiling, and then on the next page it's just boom, he's a serial killer. So that was kind of a shock. I 100% do not blame Kelsier for blowing the absolute shit out of that nobleman's house, considering how many young girls that asshat had raped and murdered. He had it coming. So that was our introduction to Kelsier, and I mean, how could you not have a fantastic book after reading that, okay? The second that pretty short prologue almost was finished, I was just like, I'm going to love this book. Our introduction to Vin is just as interesting, but in a completely different way. The whole part of her having luck, that automatically made her stand out, okay? Even just the way that she was introduced was absolutely incredible. Like, Brandon Sanderson is the master of introducing new characters. Like, he has this ability that I have not seen in any other author on the planet, where he somehow tells you every single thing you need to know without actually saying a thing. Let me explain. I knew from like the 3rd line of this book that Kelsier and Vin were going to change the world, okay? And I know that is obviously very easy for me to say now, but in all seriousness, I knew that Vin and Kelsier were just incredible people. They were brave, they were kind, they were as good as people can be, despite the fact we did just learn Kelsier's a serial killer. I won't hold it against him. Despite what these characters have done, despite what they went on to do, like objectively, morally, in all the ways that count, they are good people. And all of this, all of that previous 5 minutes rant, all of that I just knew from the first few lines. And Sanderson didn't tell me this. He didn't even have other characters tell me this. He just managed to somehow make me like these people without having to make them do anything good. I mean, Kelsier killed people. Vin was in the middle of stealing something. I don't think I can express just how incredible this is for Sanderson to tell me all of this without telling me all of this. Like, he tells us that these people are not good people. This whole show don't tell thing, he shows us. He shows us these are not good people. He tells us these are not good people. In every single possible meaning of the word good, this is not them. And yet, despite all of that, 2 chapters in and I'm hooked. Kelsier and Vin are just, they're the definition of chaotic good. Moving on. So the first meeting was between Kelsier and the rest of the crew, and it was absolute gold, you guys. I was laughing so much. Like, it is so difficult to make such a serious topic really funny, while still obviously maintaining the seriousness. I mean, these guys are talking about murder, they're talking about potential genocide of the nobility, they're talking about overthrowing an entire democracy. And then one of them will say something and you're just snorting. The first meeting was just Kingsman, Thomas Crown Affair, Now You See Me, just level of gold. It was like the fantasy version of Robin Hood on steroids. These guys are literally gentlemen thieves, and it's a trope that I will fall for every single time without regret. In saying that, the ska, like, they're not servants, they're slaves. They are 100% slaves, and considering that like 90% of the nobility are actually described as being white middle-aged men, I was getting some pretty racist undertones. But, you know, then I thought, no, you're probably just overreading this. Every civilization has had some form of slavery in the past, not necessarily based on race, some was just based on criminals, some was based on punishment. You know, I'm probably just seeing things that aren't there. And that was fine, I moved on. But then the terracemen were introduced. The terrace people are described with very stereotypically African traits. And I mean, the fact that they even came with their own religious beliefs that the predominantly white characters all found very strange and did kill. Eventually, they literally did kill them out. So, you know, racial undertones became racial overtones. Now, there is nothing derogatory as such that is said about the terrace race, but the fact that they are treated so poorly in general, and the fact that they have breeding programs and just so many just, why would you do that to a human being, things happen to them, they're still treated as slaves, and according to the white nobility, that is all they are good for. So I don't know if Sanderson wrote it this way especially in order to increase the sympathy for the ska and to increase the hatred for the nobility. Whether he knew or didn't know what he was doing, the point is, it is not good. Going back to Vin's general anxiety and worries and, let's face it, post-traumatic stress disorder, it is dealt with brilliantly. Oh my gosh, you guys, there are so many stories where you've got the mistreated, abused girl who is whisked away by her charming savior, and suddenly everything is beautiful. No, that's not what happens. Things suddenly don't become perfect and all rosy and all better. Trauma is a thing, and it is a persistent bastard. Vin has been emotionally, physically, mentally abused her entire life. Like, she's not going to suddenly get over that after spending a few days with decent human beings. Like, she still hides food after all the years spent as starvation. Like, she still flinches back after all the years of being slapped like every day. She still sits with her legs folded underneath her so she can just escape super quick. Even after all of her abusers are literally murdered, like so brutally. I have to admit, I kind of laughed when I read that part. Anyway, even that all her abusers are dead and gone and literally cannot do a single damn thing to her, she still spends months wondering, as part of Kelsier's team, you know, what are their motives? They can't be doing this, you can't trust anyone, there has to be some ulterior motive, she can't trust these guys, even if she really wants to. And that is exactly what she should be doing, okay? Like, a few kind words doesn't erase a lifetime of abuse, and there are so many authors who just ignore this. And seeing her actually consciously recognize that these are good people, but still doubt herself around them, but still doubt their motives, despite the fact she knows that they would never hurt her. That is exactly what happens when you are an abuse survivor, and seeing this on paper, even if the book just ended there, I would have been happy with it. It is just such an important, incredible thing for authors to get right, and authors so rarely get it right. So it was a relief to read this. There is a scene where Kelsier talks to Vin about Mare, his dead wife, and he says, I quote, "A daughter with Mare's same dark hair and resilient stubbornness." And Vin has dark hair, and she is resiliently stubborn, and she is just standing there. And then, I mean, immediately I'm like, okay, so Vin is their daughter, just ends up. And then Kelsier makes it even better, because he says, and I quote once more, "We're a bit too much alike that way, you and I." You guys, my heart broke. Just let them be a family. Just let them be happy, okay? Kel and Mare and their little baby thief, just let them be happy. Let them live. You know, that's actually, I feel like that's a less of a tall order to ask. They don't need to live happily ever after, they just need to live. Full stop. Speaking of feels factor, did Sanderson really tell me that Marsh had been brutally murdered, only to then reveal, no, actually he hadn't been brutally murdered, but you know what? We're gonna brutally murder Kelsier instead. Kelsier. Let's just go ahead and murder Kelsier. Not as if he's the best, most purest understanding of death, the main character or anything. Of course not. No, like... I love this book, okay? You probably got that by now. I absolutely love this book. I love every single individual little thing that happens. And I wouldn't change them for the world. Except Kelsier's death. They're like... I understand why it had to happen, okay? I do. I understand killing the mentor so the hero can flourish is literary device 101, okay? I even expected it to happen, because all plot devices aside, every time Sazid, or Sazed, I feel like Sazid sounds better, but it's probably pronounced Sazed. Every time Sazid was in the same room as not just Kelsier, but also with Vin. Every time he was in the same room as Vin and he told her about her religion, it was always nice and kind of happy as a religion can be. And you know, she was like, oh, that's interesting, it's not for me though. And Sazid was like, oh, that's okay. But every time he was in the same room as Kelsier and Kelsier asked for a religion, it was just martyrdom. Just every single one of the religions, without fail, that Sazid told Kelsier about, ended in death. Did he tell martyr stories to Vin? Did he tell martyr stories to Vin? No, he did not. Did he tell martyr stories to Doc, or to Clubs, or to literally any single person else? No, he did not. But he told Kelsier. And Kelsier always looks thoughtful or saddened after every single time Sazid basically tells him, you gotta die, bruh. The fact he looked sad every time Sazid told him these people died, that's fair. You know, like, he knew himself he had to become a martyr if he wanted his religion of hope to survive and to actually take down the Lord Ruler. He had to die. So yes, I 100% understand why he had to die. Yes, I know that the Lord Ruler himself would likely still be alive if Kel hadn't died. But does that mean I like it? No, it does not. So, moving on to our other male protagonist. I don't know if I even call him a male protagonist. Elend. Elend is... I think protagonist is putting it a bit much. He's just an... He's not a protagonist, he's not an antagonist, he's just a tagonist. Agonist. He's an agonist. Elend is an agonist. And I have to admit that our agonist is kind of blah. I mean, like, yeah, of course, I like him. I mean, like, I'm glad that he lived, and yeah, he deserved to become king, and that was like the funniest thing ever, you guys. when Lord Venture, looked his son in the eye and said, "I'm leaving you here to die because you are a coward and an idiot." And Elend was like, "Fuck you, Dad." And his dad left. And then Elend became the fucking king. Irony doesn't begin to cover it. He did deserve to become king. I love the fact he became king, but like, that was pretty much his only role, you know? Yes, you can argue he also contributed to Vin's whole "everyone will betray you" voyage of self-discovery. But that also kind of contributes to my point. Without him, Vin still would have gone from trusting no one to, oh yeah, good men actually do exist. Even just purely based on Kelsier alone, even if she hadn't met the rest of the team, Kelsier is enough of a good dude to make her realize, okay, it's actually okay, you can trust people, it's, you know, not everyone's out to kill you. But Elend, I mean, that made up like 50% of his purpose, and that wasn't even necessary. So we're already gone down to this half-needed character, and that half is him becoming king. The only purpose he had just by himself is becoming king, and yeah, he deserved it. I do not doubt for one moment that he will not become an incredibly great king. I just wish that his role wasn't as blatant as future leader and Vin's love interest. I mean, he's a pretty great character, you know? He's a pretty interesting dude. He's got all these ideas. He actually stood up to nobility, which none of the other nobilities did. So I don't necessarily wish we had seen more of him. I just wish that he had had a greater impact, because he is well developed enough for that to be a possibility. Speaking of Vin, her development, you guys, was just mwah. Not only can Sanderson create absolutely incredibly brilliant characters, he can create brilliant female characters. Okay. I have never read any female character as well written by a male author as I have with Sanderson. And that, okay, that isn't just limited to Vin in Mistborn. Like, him in general, every female character that I've read by him, or every female character I've heard that he wrote, is just incredible. Like, Vin, she learns and she changes and she adapts so incredibly throughout this novel, but she still remains herself. It is so difficult to get good character development where the end result is still recognizable from the beginning. Development isn't this person becoming someone else, it's about this person learning to adjust some aspects of themselves to become something else. As much as they learn, they are still themselves. You don't suddenly become this brand new person. And it is so rare to see that in a character, but it is also so rare to see that in a female character, okay? Vin still resembles her actual true self, you know? Like, if you compare the first and last pages of the book, you still know it's her. You're not suddenly like, oh wow, you know, where did that cute little street rat baby thief disappear to? Like, no, she is still that person. She's just learned how to be that person more built on top of that person. She's such an incredible character. At the end of this long novel, and you guys, when I say long, I'm talking about Leo Tolstoy long. Despite gaining and losing new friends and family, despite learning how to use her powers, despite a war, Vin is still who she used to be, okay? She's just developed, she's learned, she has become a better person, despite having killed a few more other persons. Now, as we come to the end of this video, and the end of the feeling in my legs, let's talk about the end of this novel. If I'm being honest, it was kind of, you know, sort of maybe anticlimactic. Finding out that the Lord Ruler was actually a servant of the original Lord Ruler who just, you know, killed the real prophesized Lord Ruler. I don't know. I mean, it was just iffy, I guess. I mean, it wasn't necessarily predictable, but I wasn't surprised either. To begin with, the whole hero of the ages prophesized for millions of years. The fact that that dude could just be killed by a servant, just like that, like, bam bam, you're dead. That was kind of iffy. That is relatively suspicious, or if it's not meant to be suspicious, then that is just a bad ending, Sanderson. All the other 671 pages were great, and then you revealed that this servant dude just killed the most powerful leader of all times. And yes, I know you can argue he didn't have his power before then, but the point is, the prophecy said he would become the most powerful leader of all times, but he was killed before the prophecy, so the prophecy was false. And if the prophecy was false, then he couldn't be the most powerful ruler of all times, because he isn't meant to exist to begin with, because the prophecy didn't exist, so he wouldn't have gone looking for that power, and he would have stayed in his little village as a blacksmith until the end of dying days. I'm gonna just leave you think on that one. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please like, subscribe, comment down below any books you'd like me to read next, any books you'd like me to review next. If you want to say hi, I will say hi back to you. And I will talk to you guys then.